Tiny Epic Vikings is a new game in a line of games that I've enjoyed very much over the last decade or so. The Tiny Epic games, they give you the experience of a game that usually comes in a much larger box, but they place it in a smaller box, which is not nothing because it means that you have a medium weight, design-wise, game that is very portable. Very often, the portable games are fillers and the complex games are difficult to drag around. And I recently was in Italy for a vacation with my family. This is one of the games that I brought with me, and it worked very well because I could play. I could play a game again with some substance, with some bite to it. It's marketed for 1 to 4 players, so it has a solitaire version which I haven't played. The 2-player variant is a variant. You need to have like a non-playing party. And in my videos, from time to time, you'll hear me grumbling against the 2-player variant, but I played this one because I had to. There was a day that only my 13-year-old was willing to play the game. And guess what? Actually, it works very well because a non-playing party is very easy to handle. It doesn't add pretty much any complexity, so I was really happy with the 2-player variant. And again, the main game probably is the one for 3 to 4, but I'm telling you, the 2-player variant is legit here. Tiny Epic Vikings, so we're Vikings, so we're gonna do Viking stuff. We're gonna build ships and temples, we're gonna sail, we're gonna deploy settlers, and we're gonna fight over islands, so we're gonna collect runes, and we're gonna influence the gods. Each game you're gonna have 3 gods. They come from a pool of cards, and so they don't always have to be the same ones. And each will be associated with a kind of rune, and it can be different. It's a random placement there. During the game, you will also collect favor cards, and these are worth points at the end of the game. The value of each rune that you have in your pool at the end of the game is equal to the position of the marker on the corresponding god. It's called a fury marker, so the more furious they become, the cooler and more powerful they become. So for example, the fury marker for this rune right now is at 6. That means these runes are worth 6, and these 2 cards, if I have them with me at the end of the game, are worth 18 points total. And that's how you score points. You can only have 3 of these favor cards, so it may be that even you have to give up some, and once you have 3, you get a better one because God just became furious, or goddess, and so the value changes. And you have 10 of these favor cards that are placed there on top and bottom of the board, and this placement is important because only the ones on the edges are available, so only 4 are available at any given time to players to fight over. Each player also has a personal display where you place your Viking meeples and sheep meeples and 10 meeples. So your meeples and your awesome wooden pieces. There's also a track here that you use to keep track of your resources, which are wood, food, and iron. And then here we have the settlers that we will place on the board. We start with a ship on the board, but we can also build more by paying the cost in resources indicated at the bottom. We can also build temples. And as you can see, the cost increases over time, 2, 3, and 4 for the ships, for example. You also see that there is stuff printed under the placement of the wooden piece, which means that unlocks benefits. If I were to take the harvest action right now, I would get extra resources because those icons are now visible, but I'm not quite there yet. This is a card drafting, card-driven game. That means that the main engine is we're gonna draw cards from a deck of Viking cards, that one, and the number changes depending on the era. We're gonna play 3 eras, which means 3 rounds, and they're gonna have 4, 5, and 6 cards respectively. So we start with 4. Card drafting, card-driven game. That means I look at my cards, I select one, face down to form my pool, I pass it around to the next player who gives me their hand, and I select one, and you think you know how that goes. We continue like that until, well, I have my own pool of cards, and then we will start playing those cards. During your turn, You play a card, you resolve what it says, and that's the core engine of the game. So you will have, also after you start playing cards, a line of cards in front of you, and there's definitely an important engine building element here because the runes on top of the cards that you play stay visible. And so, for example, I have 3 runes of that kind, and there may be effects that that are important for that reason. I don't know what. How about this one? Booyah. When you play a card, the card can be played face up or face down. If you play it face up, you will always resolve the action that you see here. For example, here I get 3 moves. And then you will resolve the action underneath if you have the right runes, which I happen to have. Awesome. This is used for battle. I can choose to play a card face down. If I'm the first player to do so, I say, hey, I'm starting a battle. That's how you start a battle, by playing a card face down. Then I choose from these 4 the card that I want us to fight over, and I place it there on that side of that mat as a reminder. Other players coming after me can choose to ignore me, and they just play their cards face up and resolve their 1 or 2 actions, or they can choose to join, in which case they play the card face down. And so ultimately we're gonna resolve by simply, when is the time, we flip our cards face up and we see who has the highest combat total. Sometimes, and this is what you find in this red-ish box here. Sometimes just a fixed number. This player played their card down and have 4. Sometimes, again, it's influenced by runes. So right now, mine is pretty good. I have 5, 3 plus, 6 actually, 3 plus number of runes. And so this player wins, and this player gets to collect that card, which gives you an immediate advantage in terms of resources you collect plus those runes at the end of the game. If I started a battle and no one joins, I had to fight against the invader, so I just draw a card. Ooh, that hurts, and I just lost against that. Now, the winner, so, gets the card. For the losers, sometimes if you lose in glory, the Vikings may still respect that. So the rune of the card that you use to lose the battle will match one of those 3 gods that I mentioned at the beginning based on the runes that they have there. Each has a boon that you get to collect if you lose in their name. And then also that will increase the fury of that god or goddess. Also, there are other game effects that may increase the fury of the gods or goddess. That's how those values are influenced. That's for battles, but remember, a lot of other actions, a lot of times actually we will be performing these actions here, such as sailing. It's pretty self-explanatory. If I have ships on the board, I can split the movement points that I get among them, and I can move from area to area. I can also move from an area to a port, for example. If there is a village, I can raid it by spending some iron, or maybe I can land in an area that doesn't have that. After I land, I can spend food to drop settlers on the island at the cost of 1 food per settler. After that, if I have the majority, because there will be Vikings from other players, especially later in the game, by dropping settlers have the majority, all of the players have to lose a Viking each. And then, well, from the first player to reach majority, I take the rune in my personal possession, and if I achieve majority later, well, I take it from whoever has it. That's another way of getting runes. Majority is achieved, yes, by dropping people there and also by counting influence. Each Viking has an influence of 1, each ship adds 2, and each temple adds 4. Now, in order for you to gain influence, the ship is worth 2, but you need to have boots on the ground, which means temples and or Vikings. A ship by itself doesn't do anything in terms of control. It only adds 2. But it could be good because later, after I plant a temple, which is 4, which is substantial, then I move my settlers somewhere else. So moving comes again with the option of dropping off settlers. Then we have the action of building, which again is how I get new ships and or new temples. There's an action that allows me to ferry my Vikings across these dotted lines without ships, with the usual possible effects that come from upsetting the majority in an area. The action of harvesting will give me extra resources, and it's indicated on the card how many. Plus, again, remember the ones that you may have unlocked. I'm going to show you just the icon for building if I find it. There's the icon for fairing. I cannot find the build, but hey, it's a hammer, and it's you'll know it's building. Do they have it? There you go. There it is. And after I perform my action, remember, if I have the right type of rune there, I can perform another action such as collecting some extra stuff, for example, fairing people for free, and so on and so forth. Trading resources, exchanging resources, wood for food or food for metal, for example, and so on and so forth. So, this is the idea. I think I gave you maybe not every rule, probably not, but my videos are never tutorials, but I gave you the general sense of this card drafting, card-driven game in which we get a hand of cards, we build a hand of cards by drafting, and we play them, creating our little empires, and from time to time starting a fight over these cards because they are the key to winning the game. Card drafting, card-driven, area majority, engine building. This is a game that doesn't just pack a lot of components into a small box, but really manages putting together a lot of different mechanics, and it does that pretty well. It's interesting, there was a time in the early 2000s, remember? There was a new revolutionary mechanic coming out. Oh my gosh, worker placement, never seen that before. Deck building, card drafting. The last 10 years or so, I have the impression we haven't seen quite as much truly new mechanics, but we have seen these being recombined differently, and this is an example of this, of a game that recombines known mechanics in a new thing that feels organic, that feels very smooth, and most importantly, plays well, is fun, and gives you interesting decisions to consider along the way. Because I'm drafting those cards and I really want those actions that I need, but I also, maybe by taking those actions only, I'm not building a good engine, and I'm building the engine, but is it the engine I need right now to trigger a certain event, to put together a mighty battle? So very interesting decisions there in how the different levels of the experience come together, from drafting to building your engine while you're also taking actions, possibly starting a battle, trying to get a sense of what the opponent may have based on their engine. And you also have that sense of precisely these Vikings that are preparing for battles, because going to battle later in a round is probably more profitable because you may have an engine that you can use, but only if you have the right resources in some cases and the right combinations of things. So within each round, you have a very nice sense of escalation, again, coming from the engine, coming from the fact that the board becomes cluttered and busy, and you have fewer Vikings, so you need to start building those temples to keep your influence where you can relocate your people elsewhere. So what you have here is also very tight economy, very, very tight. There is all the time the impression that I'm just one Viking away from achieving that thing, one piece of wood away, or one whatever else, 1 point from winning a battle. And so it's a nice incentive. Of course, that is precisely what gives value to gameplay, which gives value to the decisions that you make. Of course, there is an element of confrontation, because with area majority, I cannot have it unless I deny it to you. I cannot take that card unless I win a fight, sometimes against my fellow players, sometimes against the non-playing party of the invaders. But it's often a very confrontational thing, which is not bad. It's not there are games that feel confrontational in a more negative way, but here, in order for you to win one of these confrontations, you have to go through so many steps, get the food, to get the Vikings to the island, get the action that allows me to do so. And bravo, you deserve to have 1 more point of influence there, because I see how you built up to that, as opposed to maybe rolling the dice and booyah, I win and you lose. So it's interesting. It's a game with an element of confrontation, which I found not very confrontational emotionally. So I like it. I like it a lot. I may even try the solo variant at some point. For now, I just had fun playing it with my family. It's small and portable, but there's a lot of game going on here, and all the different parts and elements of the game come together very well, and the experience of gameplay is very enjoyable.